Hey guys, I'm Matt Moore from Hardwood Paroxysm, and I need to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot lately, which is the way that we talk about the New Orleans Pelicans and Derik Queen and the pick that Joe Domar sent in order to get him. So at the time of the trade, everyone knew that was stupid. Like when that came out, everyone was like, "You got to be kidding me." Everyone knew that that trade was bad. If you missed it and if you're not aware, the Pelicans traded an unprotected first round pick to the Atlanta Hawks to move up and select Derik Queen. Now, there's all sorts of reasons that this is dumb. One, you're giving up an unprotected pick at this point, unless you are an absolute championship level team. And even then, you need to probably have a backstop at the top 5 protection on it is dumb. Like it's a dumb thing that they did. It was a bad trade. And there's all sorts of ways for us to analyze why it was bad from an asset management position. No one is arguing like, yes, you should do this. Well, one person is. I knew the Betsy on Twitter has actually talked about like, well, if you have your guy, like go get the player that you want versus no, like you need to be able that we have a lot of evidence. The top 3 picks wind up being all-stars a lot more often than 10 through 15. Like the rates of that conversion is higher. And so you probably need to be able to give yourself that backstop. No one is arguing that the Pelicans made a smart move. I don't understand why in basketball discussion and analysis and NBA Twitter, in hoop head, social media, the intelligentsia, why every single time everyone has to point out how dumb this was in relation to this year's team. Because there are 2 separate problems right now. Okay. There's the Pelicans as a basketball team, and then there's the decision to trade that pick. And they're related, but they are not the same. I'm hearing conversations where it's like, well, the Pelicans are so bad, and as if is it the reason why? As if it's evidence of, well, you traded that pick, so you're bad. That pick trade has nothing to do with why the Pelicans are awful. That has nothing to do with it. Now, it's representative of a failure by the front office. But if the front office had not made that trade, let's say that they had traded a top 10 protected pick to move up and get Derik Queen, which you're not going to get for 11 pick, but let's pretend. Okay. Let's say they traded the Pelicans would still be a disaster from the top down. They would be a disaster. It's got nothing to do with that pick. And so when we get in these conversations, we wind up doing this whole thing where we take the entire organization and act like the basketball team as if like the players signed off on that trade or that the players are aware of it. If you polled the Pelicans, do you know how many of them are probably like, yeah, I had no idea that they did that. Like, it's not my business. Because that's not part of their job. The engineering core in a firm has no idea what the accounting department is doing. They have no idea what the CEO is deciding to do with the stock. They do their job and they go home. That's what players do. Locker rooms are not insulated to front office and organizational dysfunction, which is evident with the New Orleans Pelicans, and DeJounte Murray's talked about that. But like the things that we judge organizations on, which is asset management, cap space, contract value, these types of things are not what the players are paying attention to. The players are insulated. They're struggling because the roster has problems, the coaching has problems, and the organization has problems. And those are very evident. If you want more information, by the way, on like, if you're curious about what exactly the problems are with the Pels, like why is this team so bad? Go listen to the Substack podcast In the Know, in the NO. Ashamadua. It is phenomenal. It is terrific and really gives you an idea of who is involved in these decisions from the Saints side so that you can make that kind of assertion and know what you're talking about as to why the situation is so screwed up, about why there's so many problems with the organization, who's involved in this and what their buy-in is. That trickles down to the coaching staff. How is Willie Green not fired yet? Got to get a win versus the Mavericks last night. Good win is. I watched that game. It was hilariously bad. It was hilariously bad. But Willie Green has lost the locker room, and that's evident. When they came through Denver, first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, these guys have checked out. There is a level that NBA players play with. There's a really interesting kind of fine line between playing with joy and playing like you do not give a fuck. And the Pelicans are playing like they do not give a fuck. That's very evident from everything that they're doing. And that's a coaching problem. Like you have to have buy-in, and Willie Green has none right now. There's talent on this roster. Zion is still talented, even if he's not quite what he was. That's evident by the rim finishing rates. But like Trey Murphy's really good. Why is he so bad this year? Jeremiah Fears is having a really good season. And you know who was good in that Mavericks game was Derik Queen, who's quietly had a couple of really good games. And that's who I want to talk about next. By making everything about this situation into that pick conversation, as if the problems are not greater. You know what's a bigger problem than trading an unprotected first-round pick, as bad as it was? The fact that DeJounte Murray has said that when he's gone through things, there's no one in the organization to support him. That's your current point guard who's injured and going through a lot and had a nightmare season last year with personal loss and felt like there was no one he could turn to. That's a problem. That's a much bigger problem than this pick trade. And Derik Queen does not deserve to have his entire career reflected through that trade. We watched this happen with Marvin Williams and Chris Paul. For those too young to remember, the Hawks selected Marvin Williams ahead of Chris Paul. Now, it was a bad selection. Everyone knew at the time. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you not taking Chris Paul? Take Chris Paul. And like Marvin wound up fine for the Hawks in time and went on to actually have a really good NBA career. He was a good veteran that helped teams win in a variety of spots. But he was never lived up to the billing or where he was drafted. But he had a good career. He had a good career, and it was never Marvin's fault that the Hawks drafted him above Chris Paul. He didn't make that decision. Derik Queen didn't decide to be the team that the Pelicans traded an unprotected first for. And always talking about it does him a disservice in his professional career as he's learning to try and grow up as a young man in very difficult situation. He does not need that extra kind of analysis. Now, like, look, when I watched Queen, he had like an awesome Euro step move to finish, to get a foul on Daniel Gafford. Should have been an and one last night. Missed the second free throw. He shows a lot. He's going to be a great screener. He's going to be a good roll man. There's a lot of ways that he winds up being an empty stats big that just kind of dunks and doesn't play enough defense and winds up just being okay. There's a lot of scenarios where Queen doesn't work out. And again, you don't trade up for that type of player with an unprotected pick to get to the 11th. You just don't do that. But that's not Queen's fault. And he deserves the opportunity to make mistakes and learn without constantly the conversation being always reflected back on that pick. We know that the Pelicans organization is in the gutter. We know it's a garbage can. But by constantly making it about the pick, you show a misunderstanding of what makes teams good, which is organizational strength, structure, and strategy. And the absence of those three things with the Pelicans are a bigger deal than trading that pick. Lay off of Derik Queen. Let the kid have a young career. And if you want to talk about the problems of the Pelicans, you got a lot better things to criticize them for. I'll have more videos on hardwood paroxysm.